This airport is sinking. Right now, as you watch this video, it's sinking into the sea. Slowly, silently, millimeter by millimeter, but relentlessly. It's been sinking since the very first day it opened, and it will continue to sink for decades to come. An entire international airport built on an island that didn't exist before. No island existed here. There was only water. Man-made, in the middle of an open bay, with his own hands. And this island is slowly disappearing.
Engineers knew this would happen before they even dumped the first stone into the sea. They knew they were building a sinking airport.
And they built it anyway. And now they fight every day to keep it from sinking. That's how it works. Now look, why build an airport that is sure to sink? Osaka, Japan's second largest city. By the 1960s, it was suffocating. The old airport was squeezed into dense urban development with no room to expand, houses and mountains all around. And planes roared right over residents' rooftops. People filed lawsuits for noise. And the Japanese came up with a bold idea. If there's no room in the city, let's go to sea. Let's build an airport where no one lives, right in the bay, on the water, open 24/7, without a single noise complaint. It looks good on paper. There's just one problem. There's no land in that part of the bay, just water and a soft seabed beneath it.
And this idea turned out to be so complicated that decades passed between the first blueprints and the first stone. They argued about where to build it, how to build it, and whether the whole thing would sink at all.
Many considered the project sheer madness, building an entire airport on water, on clay, in a land of earthquakes and typhoons. But Osaka had no choice. The city was suffocating without a new airport. And finally, Japan made a decision. If there is no land, we will create it. And here's the real engineering challenge. They're deciding to build the airport 5 kilometers from the coast, in Osaka Bay. And the water depth there is 18 meters. But that's not the worst of it. The worst thing isn't the water. The worst is the seabed. Beneath the water lies a thick layer of soft alluvial clay. Not rock, not sand. Clay, saturated with water, soft as butter. And on this clay they need to place an island 4 kilometers long and weighing tens of millions of tons. Perhaps you already understand where this is all heading. Place such a weight on soft clay, and it will begin to press into the seabed.
The island will sink, and the engineers knew it in advance. Now the numbers. To raise the island from the sea, more than 180 million cubic meters of rock were dumped into the bay.
3 entire mountains were raised for this purpose. 3 actual mountains, transported by barges and dumped into the sea to create a single, flat platform.
The island turned out so enormous that it can be seen from space. And it wasn't built in a single day. For years, barge convoys carried rock and dumped it into the sea at the same spot. Layer after layer, the seabed rose to the surface, and sometimes construction was deliberately halted. They allowed the fresh fill to settle and compact before adding the next layer. The sea was slowly transformed into dry land, ton after ton. And on this man-made island, they erected a 1,700-meter-long passenger terminal, one of the longest in the world. All this was built on clay, which was bound to subside under such a weight. On paper, it seemed insane. All that remained was to build it and somehow keep it afloat. The first question: how can you even place an island on a seabed that will naturally sink under the weight?
Here's the trick. Engineers decide not to fight the settlement, but to outsmart it. If the clay is going to compress and squeeze water out of itself anyway, make it do that in advance, before construction begins.
Thousands of wells are drilled all over the seabed and filled with sand. Sand drains. Then they pile the colossal weight of the embankment on top, and the water, under pressure, begins to escape from the clay up these sand columns. The clay releases water and compacts faster. The engineers literally squeeze out the seabed like a sponge even before the airport is built. Clever, but, as it turns out, not enough. and so the island is filled. The airport is being built, and then what the engineers feared most happens. The island is sinking faster than they had calculated. According to the most optimistic forecasts, it should have subsided by about 8 meters, and that in 50 years. Slowly, evenly, under control. But the clay behaved differently. Even before its opening, by 1990, the island had sunk much deeper than planned.
By 1999, the settlement had reached 8.2 meters. What was supposed to happen over half a century happened almost immediately. The clay was far more treacherous than they had expected.
The airport hadn't even fully opened yet, and the earth was already slipping out from under it. This is where things get interesting, because the real masterpiece of this construction isn't the island itself. It's what engineers have come up with to live on a sinking planet. Look closely. The terminal, almost 2 kilometers long, doesn't rest on a regular foundation. It rests on 900 columns. And these aren't just any columns. Under each one is a hydraulic jack. The whole point is this: the island is sinking unevenly. In some places it's stronger, in others it's weaker. And if nothing is done, the building will warp and collapse. So the engineers aren't trying to stop the subsidence. They're adjusting to it. How it works in real life.
Sensors constantly monitor each of the 900 columns, detecting which part of the building has sunk the most.
Wherever the island has sunk, a crew comes in. The jack lifts the column. A thick steel plate is inserted into the foundation. The jack lowers the column back down, now resting on the plate.
The building section is back at the desired height. And so it goes, column by column, throughout the entire terminal. The building doesn't resist the sinking island. It slides down with it, and is simply lifted back up regularly. Every couple of years, the entire building is re-inspected and leveled if necessary. A terminal that's always being repaired. Brilliant. But herein lies the most insidious detail. The island is sinking unevenly. One edge is sinking faster than the other, and uneven settlement is far more dangerous than uniform settlement. It's what warps and tears structures. That's why each of the 900 columns has its own measuring device. Engineers use it to see exactly where and by how much the building is tilting. This isn't a case of set it and forget it. It's a constant monitoring process as the island slowly and crookedly creeps into the sea beneath the entire airport. Thousands of measurements year after year just to keep the enormous building level. But the building is only half the job. There's also the runway.
And the runway is kilometers of solid pavement, and it too is settling unevenly. Ordinary concrete on such ground would simply crack. Fissures would spread like waves, rendering the runway useless.
What to do? Another trick. The runway isn't made of rigid concrete, but of flexible asphalt. It springs back. It adjusts to uneven settlement and doesn't crack. And where necessary, the runway is also replumbed and leveled again. The airport has been turned into a construction kit, constantly being adjusted to accommodate the receding earth. The terminal itself is a masterpiece in its own right.
Designed by the renowned architect Renzo Piano, it's over 1.5 kilometers of curved glass and steel, as fluid as an airplane wing. But beauty isn't the point. What matters is that the building was designed from the start to flex. It features specially designed movable joints. When the island settles unevenly or the earth shakes, the building doesn't break. It moves slightly and remains intact. And this isn't just theory. A few months after its opening, the region was struck by the devastating Kobe earthquake, the same one that pulled apart the piers of the nearby Akashi Kaikyo Bridge.
An airport on an artificial island, on soft clay in the middle of a bay, survived. No serious structural damage, no casualties at the terminal itself. A building designed to flex survived an impact that leveled concrete neighborhoods on the mainland.
And all of this is costing a colossal amount of money. Initially, the construction cost was estimated at around $14 billion. But the island was sinking, and the money was sinking with it. Taking into account all the modifications and efforts to combat the subsidence, the bill rose to $20 billion. It's one of the most expensive engineering projects in human history. Just keeping the island above water cost over $100 million. Every centimeter of height was paid for separately. But the island in the middle of the sea has another enemy, one we've kept quiet about so far: the sea itself. Waves, storms, typhoons, all of these batter the island's edge every day. Without protection, the sea would simply wash away the embankment and lick the shore back into the bay. So the entire island is encircled by a gigantic dike, a barrier made of tens of thousands of concrete blocks, almost 50,000 of them, and riprap, anchored in steel chambers weighing hundreds of tons each.
This wall runs around the entire perimeter, taking the impact of the sea instead of the runway, the island's first line of defense. And there's another question. The island is 5 kilometers from shore. How do you even get there? You can't drive there and you can't walk there.
The answer is the only lifeline: a bridge across the bay, almost 4 kilometers long. Everything gets to the island over it: cars, trains, fuel, people, cargo. It's a two-tiered structure: cars on top, the railway below. If this bridge breaks, the airport is instantly cut off from the world. It's the one thread that holds the entire island together. On September 4th, 1994, Kansai Airport opens. It's the world's first airport built entirely on an artificial island. Planes land in the middle of the bay, where until recently there was only water. The terminal glows in the night, like a giant wing over the sea. The world watches in disbelief. The Japanese have achieved the impossible. They built an airport on water and made it work. After a few years, the airport becomes overcrowded. A second runway is needed. And that's when the engineers do something important. They build a second artificial island next to the first. But now they know how this clay behaves. They've learned from the mistake of the first island. The second island is built with a height reserve from the start. They calculate in advance how much it will settle, and then make it exactly that amount higher. The lesson, paid for with billions, has been put to good use.
Lost line 4 kilometers along the sea, but the sea isn't giving up so easily, and it strikes back. 2018.
A powerful typhoon, Jebi, hits Osaka Bay. Enormous waves crash over the protective dike. Water floods the runway. The sinking island, already barely rising above the sea, is submerged. The airport comes to a complete standstill for almost 2 weeks, and then the very thing they feared happens. The wind tears a huge tanker from its moorings and hurls it straight into the bridge, the only thread connecting the island to the shore.
The bridge is damaged, and thousands of people find themselves trapped on a sinking island in the middle of the bay, cut off from the mainland. Exactly the nightmare that was the very idea behind the idea of an airport on the water. The sea reminds them who's boss here, and the engineers respond the only way they know how. They raise the dike. They strengthen the defenses. The island is prepared for the next onslaught of the elements. The fight continues. That's the whole point. Kansai isn't a built and forgotten airport. It's an eternal battle. The island sinks, people raise it. The seabed sinks, they level it with columns. The sea surges, they build up the dam. Engineers haven't conquered the clay once and for all. Such a victory is impossible to achieve.
Instead, they learn to live on sinking ground and reclaim it from the sea every single day, centimeter by centimeter, jack by jack. And the question for the future remains open. The good news is that the island is sinking more slowly.
By the end of the 2000s, it was only a few centimeters. The clay is gradually compacting, and one day the subsidence will almost stop. But some engineers warn that certain sections of the islands could sink so much within decades that they will reach sea level. And then, a strong typhoon, like Jebi, could flood the strips again. The race against time is not over. The only question is, who will prove more stubborn, the sea or the engineers? And you know what's most amazing? The airport isn't just holding up, it's fully alive. Right now, as you watch this video, planes are landing on this island. It's one of Japan's main airports, tens of millions of passengers a year, a huge cargo hub, dozens of airlines. Millions of people pass through a terminal that's slowly sinking.
And most of them don't even suspect that the ground beneath their feet is sinking every year. They're kept above sea level only by the stubbornness of engineers who refuse to admit that soft clay could stop an airport. Kansai shouldn't work, but it does. And it's perhaps the best thing man has ever built against the elements. And do you know what Kansai did for the world? It became a textbook example. Before it, no one had built an entire airport on an artificial island in the open sea. Kansai was the first to go this route, with all the mistakes, cost overruns, and struggles with draft. And it paid for this experience for everyone else. Then, using its lessons, other islands and airports were built, including the famous Hong Kong airport. The Japanese paid dearly for the privilege of being the first to prove that an airport on water was possible. And the rest of the world got a ready-made recipe. We've dismantled a bridge extended by an earthquake, a tunnel cut through an entire mountain, and an airport that lives on a sinking island. Every time it's the same story.
Nature says no, and the engineer answers, we'll see. If you're interested in how humans keep outsmarting the forces of nature again and again, subscribe. Here we break down only stories like these. See you at the next impossible structure.